What's up, summoners? King Blair here. Today, we're going to be talking about which MO 5-star you should choose from the Moonlight Connections from this patch that is going to be dropping next week on May 27th. So, if you guys didn't know, we do get to pick one of these. It's going to be in our account, free MO 5-star essentially, and you can get it very early on. So for early game players, it is really good for you guys. And for late game players, it is an opportunity to get some really good meta heroes. So how the video will roll out. First, I'll give my general recommendations, kind of the things you want to be looking for. Then we'll go dive deeper into each of the units as to where they perform, where they're really good, and just my overall thoughts on them, right? So if you like the video, make sure you like, subscribe, and join the Discord server, link down in the description. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So, kind of a summary. Again, I'm going to reiterate it. This next Thursday, you can actually get access to one of these heroes. That is going to be absolutely crazy good, and you get them after you complete episode 1 for the early game players. So that's after chapter 1010, right? That is going to be episode 1 is chapter 1010, right? So which is nice, right? Pretty early on. You do need to do some quests. So for late game players, some of these quests may take some time, maybe a week or two, but you'll be able to clear them, right? You should have the resources. Early game players, you should already be clearing these. It should already be something you should already be trying to do, right? Because it'll help you progress your account. But okay, enough about that. Let's actually talk for what you came here for. Which units should you select? So first, my general suggestions. There are 2 units that are going to be the ones that if you don't already have, these are the ones that I would highly recommend you pick. Arbiter Vildred and Spectre Tenebria. The other ones, they're really cool and they are good units and they have their places where they can shine, but Spectre Tenebria and Arbiter Vildred have the most uses. So if you have one, if let's say you have Arbiter Vildred, then you're probably going for Spectre Tenebria. That's what I recommend. If you have Spectre Tenebria, I would recommend going for Arbiter Vildred, right? Those are the 2, but if you have both, we'll talk about that situation when we go deeper into each of the units. As far between Arbiter Vildred and Spectre Tenebria, Arbiter Vildred is going to be my biggest recommendation. You cannot go wrong picking Arbiter Vildred. If you're early to early late, I would highly suggest you go for Arbiter Vildred. Why? He is not extremely difficult to build. He doesn't need a ton of support. He kind of is a self-functioning unit. He doesn't really need a team around him like Spectre Tenebria, who needs a team around her. So it's a very self-sustaining unit. He has a variety of builds, and you can easily give him free gear and he'll perform his job decently, right? Of course, the higher you get up, the better you get at PvP, the better you'll need to make your Arbiter Vildred. Eventually, he'll become one of your best geared units. But again, it's just a really solid option and makes a lot of the game a lot easier, right? PvE and PvP, right? So there's a ton of uses for him. As far as Spectre Tenebria, she would be, I would suggest thinking about her if you're late game, but it's almost like a 70-30. If you have the proper support for Spectre Tenebria, if you have the Knights, the Last Rider Crowd, the Fallen Cecilia, the crazy good gear as a late game player, Spectre Tenebria just ascends into one of the best PvP heroes in the game, right? She was almost permaban in the World Cup. Now, we do have Carrot that is a good check to her, which is why I used to think it was like 60-40. But if you're a late game player, it is definitely an option. The Soulburn is amazing on her, and we'll talk about more about her in depth. But again, kind of summarizing, Arbiter Vildred, I know it's kind of an easy thing to think about, and most people already told you this. But yeah, Arbiter Vildred is the one that you're most likely going to be going for early to early late. That's kind of almost a no-brainer. For a late game player, Spectre Tenebria is going to be really good. Again, if you have the right support for her, she shines like crazy. So it is also not something too terrible if you don't like Arbiter Vildred's design, or if you just like waifus better, Spectre Tenebria. Now, as far as the other 4, there is no reason you should pick these over those 2. But if you already have Arby, if you already have Stene, then these become better options. Ken, kind of a spice pick. He does okay in Arena, does pretty good in Guild Wars, has some matchups in RTA, does not have any PvE, unlike Stene and Arby, who do have PvE, but he's going to be there just for like the spice. Dark Corvus, if you're a Guild Wars, if you're someone that's really deep into Guild Wars, right? He's going to be the best Guild Wars offensive unit. So if you're someone that wants to get into competitive guilds, right? If you want to get to top 50 guilds and you're worried that you're not going to be able to win against harder opponents, this is the unit for you. He can get you so many free wins against stronger people than you in Guild Wars. So definitely not a bad option if you're really into Guild Wars. Relilite is probably the next one I would recommend. I would honestly say Arby. In terms of priority, is Arby, Spectre Tenebria, Royal Dark Corvus almost the same, and then the other 2. But as far as Royal, she's going to be an amazing support. She pops in and out of RTA metas. Amazing for Guild Wars. really good for arena, although it's kind of slow if you do use Royal for arena, but you can't use her there, and just a really good support. She's only as good as your DPS though, which is one of the things about her, and she does have really high gear requirements to make insane Royals, but again, pretty nice unit, right? She does a really good job, and is very versatile, and for RTA, very, very good there. And then Judge Kise is going to be the worst one. This is probably the one that I would not recommend. Even if you're a cleaver, the only real place you can use it right now is Guild Wars. She does not have an arena presence, because Polides is everywhere, right? So you can cleave with her for like early on, right? If you're like an earlier game player, but once you get to like high challenger or close to champion, most people are going to have Polides or ways to deal with cleave, where Judge Kise does not shine as much. Can you still use her in cleave for arena? Yes, but she's only arena and Guild Wars. She probably has the least uses out of all of these and has the least impact, and it's replaceable, right? That's the biggest thing for her. She may get a buff as well as MLK. All right, now that I gave you the overview, kind of like just essentially Arbiter, Vildred, Stene are priority in that order. Then it's probably Ruel, then maybe between Ruel and Dark Corvus, and then I would honestly say right now MLK is more likely to get a buff than Judge Kise. But even then, it's MLK is slightly better than Judge Kise right now, although Judge Kise with the right cleave is really, really good. So between those two, they're kind of a toss-up. Pro Arby, Stene, Ruel, Dark Corvus toss-up, MLK and Judge Kise toss-up, right? That's how we're going to say it. All right, now let's talk about each unit individually so you guys can kind of understand what they do in the order that I told you guys, the priority of the list, right? So first, let's talk about Arbiter Vildred, who is going to be my recommendation for pretty much most players, right? Just because he's so crazy good. So we're going to go to the Thieves, and we do have our Arbiter Vildred. So Arbiter Vildred is going to be the best one. Why? He's a DPS that can revive himself, and that's pretty much it. The glancing hit is amazing for PvP. He has an attack that hits 2 units. Where can you use him and why is he so good? He's basically used everywhere. In PvP, he's a monster in the right setup and requires little team compositions. He has the counter build, which is called the Degen RB build, which is on counter and crit or immunity set. And it's very tanky, and you can't one-shot him, and he can counter and hit 2 people and just do a ton of damage, right? And have that Moonlight Dreamblade and be annoying. He also has a speed build, which is more for aggressive team compositions as well as for cleaves. He just does way too much damage once you pro Greater Basket. As far as PvE, PvP everywhere. RTA, Guild Wars, Arena. He's good in all PvP aspects, right? There's no PvP he's bad at. Even in PvP defense, he's good for defense as well. He's amazing for defense. He's the most used unit, and for PvE he's good for Asimec Hunt. He's good for early Banshee. He is good for Green Expedition if you don't want to build specific units for Green Expedition. He is good for some Abyss stages. He is good for some raid stages if you just need a DPS. I mean, raid's not that hard, right? You just need a DPS that can do damage. So pretty much almost a lot of places, essentially. He is good in a lot of places, and that makes him such a valuable unit just because he has so much AoE damage, has self-survivability, and honestly, he's also good at farming, although farming's not going to be as big of a thing after the next update. So Arbiter Vildred, why is he recommended? He's the most used, and he is used at a high level. It's a reason why I would recommend pulling for him for most people. It's just too much, right? It's just he does too much, has way too much mileage, and on top of all that, because he has so many variety of builds and because his job is just damage, he's not that hard to build, and that's really good for early game players. For late game, of course, you give him your best gear because you want him to shine the most. But yeah, now on to the next one is going to be Spectre Tenebria. Now this is the one that I also recommend if you already have Arbiter Vildred, and even to late game players. It's a 30-70. I would still recommend Arby over Stene, but Stene is still something that playstyle dependent, and if you have the support, she is ridiculously powerful. Why? Some people have some insane builds. My Stene is like mediocre, right? And I use her very high up a lot, right? Why? Her S3 does a ton of damage. She has permanent stealth, which means that people cannot hit her unless they use AoE. And her S1 hits 2 units. She's a mage, so she can hold books. And she can get extra turns, so she can attack 2 units with a very strong S1 multiple times. And she ramps up whenever units are dying. She is going to be amazing for late game, right? She can perform for early game. And if it's something that you maybe already have Arbiter Vildred, or maybe you just don't like Husbandos, right? Maybe you like waifus. She is really good. I will warn the people that want to pull for Spectre Tenebria, she is going to take your best gear. I will show some of the gear for some of the units like the Arby and the Stene, or I might make a video on them tomorrow so you guys get a better idea on them. But Spectre Tenebria, just an absolute monstrosity, but needs so much setup, right? Needs a lot of setup and needs really good gear. What I mean by setup, if you don't have things like Last Order Crawl, Ball and Cecilia, General Purgus, even things like Troublemaker Cross Set, things that can supplement her, right? She is going to die and she's not going to do anything, right? So if you don't have the setup for her in PvP, she's not going to be doing a lot. But if you have a good setup, or even if you have a cleave setup, right? Oxlots, Athletica, Cerise Cleave, Sidon, then she's going to be a really, really good unit as well, right? So with the right setup, she's amazing. She'll do so much work for you and you'll be getting free dubs. So that part, really, really good. Really, really awesome. Amazing unit, right? Definitely a really good unit, and you can definitely make her work. For PvE, as I mentioned, high level Abyss, she's a monster because she puts poisons on this S1, right? That's the main reason. She can also work for Raid if you're trying to transition into Raid. She does really good in Raid because, again, a lot of single target damage, poison, a lot of single target damage, and poisons, right? She does a lot of work, right? She does a lot of work, and for some Daggers card missions, like the Banshee one, you can just cheese it with a bunch of mages and soulburn her and just kill the Banshee before she even splits, right? So really, really cool unit. Really, really late game and requires incredibly good gear and incredibly good setups for her to really shine. Without those, she's just okay. Now on to the other ones. So now let's go to Ruel of Light. She is going to be a unit that pops in and out of metas, and it's going to be because she has the biggest protection for one unit. Giving an S3 that makes them invincible and revives full with invincibility is just so good. It essentially just gives them an extra life, right? And when you think of things like Rylet, things like LQC, things like Spectre Tenebria, which you mentioned are amazing units that do a lot of damage but need some support. This is the reason why Ruel will pop in, because she's able to keep them alive and let them do their job. Even think like Landy, right, who does a bunch of damage. That is where Ruel shines. In Guild Wars, you can pair her with Landy in a more aggressive team composition. I usually use her with Ross and Ruel, and then I'll put a really big DPS in the backline that I don't really care if they die because I have two supports along with them and keeping them alive, right? So really, really good for Guild Wars. For RTA, she's also going to be amazing, right? Because in the right team setup, she's really, really good. But again, she's only as good as a unit that she's going to be protecting. The S3 is very, very toxic. The invincibility is amazing. The S2, being able to, again, cleanse everything and give a barrier. And then the S1, just a nice little heal, but if you soul burn, it's a full heal. She does struggle against AoE team compositions, and in faster metas, she tends not to do as good, but for the most part, still a really, really strong unit, which is why it's always nice to have her. It makes teams a lot safer. Now on to Dark Corvus. He is the king of Guild Wars offense. Why this S3? Essentially a true damage S3 that's based on his health. So you have a tanky unit that's not going to die easily, that can take out anything in the game. This, with a soul burn, a good Dark Corvus will be doing 28 to 30k damage, right? That's going to kill any tank in the game. That's going to kill anything, right? And the thing is, though, it takes a while to ramp up, which is why it's not good for RTA. And because it's based on health, the damage actually does drop. But usually in Guild Wars, him plus Achates can essentially take out almost every single defense on this planet. Why? Achates, High Aphras, can cleanse for him, can keep him alive. He just kills something easily, just pop him, and then you're chilling, right? So him, the S3, being able to essentially one-shot any unit in the game is amazing. The Provoke is a nice addition, and the S2 is essentially just helping you ramp up, right? It's just helping you ramp up, right? So to the S3 and reduces the cooldown, right? So really, really amazing S3, but again, it takes a while to ramp up. I used this Dark Corvus on my brother's account for Guild Wars, and even though my brother's account was like a super newbie account, I was beating like top 100 guilds because of Dark Corvus, right? I would just do Dark Corvus, Crow, and like Achates, and I would just get free wins. Just free dubs everywhere. So Guild Wars wise, really, really good. Again, if you're not really into Guild Wars, and you don't really care if you're not getting 6-6 all the time, or you already have really good teams, you don't really need him. I don't have Dark Corvus on this account, and I go 6-0 basically every single Guild Wars at a top 100 level, right? But again, really, really nice, really, really safe. If you're really into Guild Wars, if you're trying to be a top 50 guild, then you probably may want to think about it, right? But and get consistent wins. Then that's something you really want to think about, because Dark Corvus is going to be that good. Now on to the next one, who is going to be Martial Artist Ken. He has really fallen off, mainly because units like Spectre Tenebria and Landy. His main mechanic is going to be that he can counterattack when he's hit, and will always result in a critical hit damage, or a critical hit, which means you can give him a lot of damage and have a lot of different stats. There is a couple build like things with Lifesteal and Efres, which are some really cool and unique builds right now that can make him a big threat because you can't really lock him down, and if you hit him by accident and he counters, he could potentially kill you, and he can lifesteal off of that, and it's really, really cool, right? The only problem is going to be, again, for RTA, Spectre Tenebria and Landy are really good against him. Things like Crow that can just one-shot him are really good against him. Last Rider Crow, again, really good against him. Any unit that can one-shot him, really good against him, because again, he's a very big stat unit. In Guild Wars and in Arena, where you can control what's going to happen, you can control who's going to hit MLK, you can definitely abuse him. In Arena, there's a lot of cleaves that will actually use him because they want the opponent to hit them after they cleave, and MLK kind of just finishes the job off for them because of this counterattack mechanic, right? And then, of course, the S3 increases attack on himself and decreases defense. Kind of nice, but again, more of a spice unit. Definitely fun. I wouldn't consider him meta in any regard, but he is the next unit that could potentially get a buff, right? MLK and Judge Kisa are both units that are potentially slated to get a buff in the future. So if you're a gambling person, MLK is not a bad option since there's a good chance he will get buffed. Since right now, he's more of a spice unit rather than like a OP ML unit. So it's pretty cool, right? There's some people that have some really spicy MLKs and even they can't make them succeed properly. But again, there's maybe a meta in the future. And then last, but definitely not least, Judge Kisa. She used to be the queen of cleaving. She used to be the best cleave unit in the game, but with the resurgence of Polides, you can't really do Oxlot's Jugs anymore, right? Especially in High Arena, because you can't really push Judge Kisa up. She usually was built with all damage, even though she has fast-based speed, and you would push her up with Oxlots, you would Soulburn this S2, and then finish off a full Arena team with S3. It is a very satisfying thing to do, right? And it's still really good in Guild Wars, right? That is why she's so good in Guild Wars, because just her and Oxlots, you can wipe most Guild Wars defenses. If there's a Guild Wars defense that does not have Polides or a speed threat, put Oxlots, put Judge Kisa, GG, you probably win that fight because this is just so much damage, right? All she needs is the 20 souls from Oxlots and she's able to essentially sweep a whole team on her own, which is really, really cool. But again, that reliance on Oxlots makes it so she's only really good for Guild Wars and in Arena when there's not going to be any anti-cleave. In RTA, she sees zero play just because it's really hard to get a full combo for her. She doesn't provide any CR pushing. There's no like versatility in builds. Even the speed build, if you try to use the speed build, you're wasting 20 souls to strip one buff, which is often not enough. And then you would use the S3, which could be cool, right? A speed Kisa could be pretty cool, but then that means she's not doing any damage. She has zero self-protection and she'll just get popped right after. Which again, 20 souls for not doing that much damage and just getting popped right after, not great, right? So again, she's not in the greatest spot, but still a pretty decent unit. Another unit that could potentially get buffed. So that is going to be it for all of these. So overall, again, just to summarize everything we talked about, Arbiter Village, biggest recommendation. Spectre Tenebria is going to be second. Then between Royale and Dark Corvus, kind of a toss-up depending what your priorities are. I would personally go for Royale, but if you're someone that really likes Guild Wars and wants to win a Guild Wars and wants to be more competitive in Guild Wars, Dark Corvus would be a better option. MLK and Judge Kisa, both kind of just whatever spice you like. If you're more of a cleaver, the Judge Kisa probably works better for you. If you're more of a bruiser player, MLK probably better for you, or even a gambling person. So that's going to be it for the summary. So that is all I have for you guys today. I hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope everyone gets to have some fun with their new ML hero. That is all I got for you guys today, and I will see y'all next time. Peace.